the Zoom. Just give it another minute or so and let some more people join up here.
Hey Jack, what's going on? This is Sebastian.
How
How's
you doing,
everything?
Sebastian? Doing well, man. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. How's the
Awesome.
week?
Cool.
How was this week?
Good, really good. Pretty busy. Um, yeah, just trying to find some buyers for some of these deals we have in escrow, the wrap buyers. And that's kind of what I'm going to go over today. Underwriting and then also disposition and seeing if a deal is a deal or not.
Perfect.
Looks like Alex is here actually. What's up, Alex?
What's up? What's up?
All right. So yeah, we're gonna get started then here today. First, we'll just start with just some basic check-ins and whatnot. And I definitely want to leave a good amount of time, at least like 20, 30 minutes for underwriting and questions with that, because that's a big one. Because I know that's kind of one of the hardest things to pick up, I would say, is looking at something and realizing if it's a deal or not and if it makes sense. And that's something I know I've talked to a handful of you guys about too, when you guys have sent me a lead where it's like, okay, I don't know if this is a deal. This might be like Pierce sent me one yesterday. I'm like, hey, let's send over an LOI. This is a coin flip at this price, but I still think there's potential. And then there's been other ones before where it's like they say they're open to sub two, but that doesn't mean it's a deal, right? The numbers could be so bad where there's no exit strategy. And then if someone took over those payments, they'd just be losing, 500, 600, $700 a month with no exit. So that's something that we wouldn't want, and that's something that we couldn't move to another potential buyer if we wanted to assign it. But yeah, so we'll kind of dive into all of those components: long-term rentals, wraps, midterm rentals, short-term rentals. I don't really specialize in the short-term rentals or the midterm rentals, but that's still another strategy that you could use to see if something has an exit. And just for an example, I'm going to go over one of the deals we have in escrow right now. And I'm going to give a breakdown on the numbers on that and what we got it locked up at, the whole breakdown of the fees and how I decided that this was a deal, because the interest rate wasn't that good on it. It was a 5.6%. So looking at that kind of briefly and it not really cash flowing as a long-term rental, we're still able to make a deal out of it. So I'm going to review that one and share my screen here in a second with the underwriting breakdown for that. But before I kind of jump into that, I'm just wondering if anyone has any questions, any updates, any wins for the week that they want to share. Anyone? How many people we have in here? 19 people? One person?
Well, I can share something. I haven't really found an actual potential deal, but I've really developed relationships with three agents who have done creative finance in the past and will be sending me uh, anything that can come up in their pipeline in the future. So I spoke with a few of them for quite some time, and like I said, they've done it in the past, and they'll be sending us some deals in the future.
Nice. Yeah, that's big. Even if it's not a deal now, it's just like you said, kind of building out that pipeline and seeing, what might come in the future. Then all of a sudden now you have all these handfuls of agents sending you stuff. Even if it doesn't work now, because there's a lot of agents like that I have that it wasn't a deal when I initially called them, and then now they're running a bunch of things by me, and we're trying to make something work. So yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm trying to remember, did you submit? I was just trying to pull that up as we were talking because I think you might have submitted one that looked decent. Yeah, I'm trying to remember though. Sorry, anyone else have anything they want to share from this past week, or questions in terms of calls or how things are going so far?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So
Is this Chris? Is
basically
this
when
Chris?
yeah, this is Chris. What's
Okay,
up?
got you. What's up, man? It says Zoom user, but I could just tell by the voice.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right, so it's basically sometimes they're asking about, okay, what if you default on the property? And so say they're asking if it defaults after 31 days, they'll get the property and the payments made. But say we default, are they behind on that payment for that month that they once they take over back the property, then they're behind on that payment after recouping the property back up?
They would be. Yeah, correct. They would be. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
that's
I
just
just
part of
wanted
it.
to
I mean,
clear
if
that
they're
up.
yeah, if they're behind on one payment though, that's not like a foreclosure thing. That's just, you could be behind on a couple handfuls of payments before you have to worry about foreclosure or pre-foreclosure. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But they'd also be protected by our entry fee slash our down payment. Well, some scenarios though the seller isn't getting much money down or any money down, but you know, there's it's settling for them knowing that a lot of these deals were coming like 20K out of pocket to get, whether it's closing costs, agent commissions, and then cash to seller. A lot of these were in that 20K range. But of course, the one example I'm going to show in a bit here, that one was a pretty low entry fee where we were all in at like 10K. But really just depends situationally. That's usually not even a concern for people though, as long as because some of these agents and sellers, they'll want to know for sure, hey, what if you die? What if you can't make the payment or something like that? Will I get the property back and it just doesn't get foreclosed on? And then that's when we reference the performance deed that the third party servicing company holds, where it will then be transferred back to them. But of course, though, there would still be that one missed payment, but they would just have to catch up on it and they'd get their property back. So that's usually not even something that's mentioned. It's more so just knowing that they will be able to get their property back if we miss that payment within 30 days. But we don't really mention that unless they bring it up, just because it adds another layer of complexity. So I'd say like 50% of the time agents and sellers bring it up. The other 50% of the time they don't. Like one of them I just closed like 2 weeks ago. We didn't do a performance deed. Yeah. Did that answer that?
Yeah, and also Melissa got back to me and she said next week is a good time to talk
Got you. Yeah, I think Melissa's
for that
playing.
one listing.
Yeah, I think Melissa's playing games with
Yeah,
us, man. Yeah.
yeah. And then still waiting on some of the information from that last deal we were talking about last night. So I just followed up on that.
Gotcha. Cool, man. Sounds good. Any other questions or updates or check-ins from people that they want to mention, whether it's questions, suggestions, really anything like that? Nothing. If nothing, wait, did Alex leave? Alex, did you want to mention anything before I screen share and kind of jump into the underwriting and really analyzing to see if something's a deal or not, and sharing that actual spreadsheet that we use?
Just two things I wanted to touch on. About the better quality list that we're going to start being able to provide, and also touch on that this coming week we're going to start paying closer attention to who's actually making calls. And I'm not saying if you don't call a day you're going to get removed, but if it's like a week goes by and you haven't made a call and there hasn't really been clear communication, I think we're going to be a little stricter on who's in this group, because Jack and I are spending a lot of time and now money. So it's pretty important to us that it's a 50-50 effort in terms of we're giving our all to make it easier for you guys to get your first deal. And so if you just put in some effort, I promise you'll start seeing results.
Yeah, well said. No, I definitely agree with that. And we're just trying to figure out how we go about it, because it's kind of hard to track other than us just skimming lists and seeing who's, been calling. But then also too, like if people are in the Zooms and we see the names and people are contributing in the chats and stuff like that, like I wouldn't worry about, because I forgot a handful of people last time we mentioned this, are like, oh, please don't kick me, I'm just starting out. Like that's totally, cool. Like we're more so concerned about the people who are like just join and then they're MIA for like 2 weeks and they don't say anything and there's no communication or anything. So yeah, that's something we're definitely going to start implementing very soon here. And yeah, was there something else you wanted to touch on too, Alex? Or was that it for that?
Hey, can I ask a quick question actually? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I didn't really have much left to say.
Yeah, I had a quick question. As I'm skimming through the list and trying to like kind of whittle down the properties that I want to call. What do you when you look at like you put the property in Zillow or Redfin or whatever? Do you guys like have a specific amount of equity that you like to look for? When you decide like, oh, this might be, at least worth an initial phone call.
Yeah.
Like
so
some yeah. I mean, I hope I'm explaining it correctly.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. And yeah, on PropStream, the list we're trying to pull, of course, technically the best way to do it would be us looking through each property one by one, analyzing it ourselves for like a minute or two, and then adding it to a list. But if we have X amount of people making calls and so many lists needing to be pulled every day, that would be like more than a full-time job essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So we are just basically filtering it down on PropStream with properties, and we're tweaking a bit and trying to make it as good as possible. And we also are paying for this new software that we're just about to start implementing to really filter it out. But what we're doing now in terms of filters is nothing bought more than 3+ years ago and nothing bought sooner within the last year, because if anything's bought within the last year, you're going to see that 7% plus interest rate or around that range. And then anything past 3+ years is going to have tons of equity. So we were before trying to filter it with PropStream's estimation of 10% equity or less estimated, but PropStream often the valuations aren't exact. They're just like guesstimates, sort of like the Zillow estimates. And then there's errors within the estimated mortgage balance and things like that. So that data was more skewed than the current data of what we're pulling. And I think Alex made a tweak to it again yesterday, sent me a screenshot. I forgot what it was, but we noticed the data getting better when we pulled it for the 3 to 1 year kind of range.
Gotcha. So it's like 200K in equity a lot, or is that a little?
Well, it depends on the purchase price of the house. You know, if it's
if it's 700 plus and it's 200, you know, if it's let's hypothetically say it's 750, because I'm finding a lot of the properties that I have are either like 750, 520, or like 380.
Gotcha.
So the ones that I see that are like 750, and then I kind of look at what it was sold for maybe 2 years ago, and it's like 5, like it's 2, and I'm like, all right, well, is that a lot of equity? Like, I don't know. And I kind of like initially I was making those calls, but then I started to really sort of streamline my, like, as I was going through the properties, and I started to streamline it a little bit more, and I was like, all right, well, that seems like a lot of equity. Let's look for ones where it's maybe only 100 or less. Like, does that make? Am I doing right? Like,
I get what you're saying. Yeah, totally. And that's something, you know, I'm assuming that might be like Florida markets. Are those?
Yeah, that's Florida.
Okay, yeah. So like those markets where those homes are kind of higher end, I feel like you're going to have kind of more of that scenario happening with higher appreciation in a short period of time, and then with those higher purchase prices.
Especially because a lot of them are in Winter Garden, which is like, you know, everybody wants to be in freaking Winter Garden down there.
Yeah, yeah. Not saying we can't, you know, make deals happen when there's a lot of equity. Like we're still throwing out hybrid offers with interest, and I've done hybrid deals before. But it does make it a little trickier when there's a bunch of equity in there, because then logically, why wouldn't the person just drop their asking price down if they have that much equity in the deal to just do a traditional sale? But I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's something like Alex and I are really trying to tweak things as best of our ability, and use these other softwares and whatnot to really like narrow down. Ideally looking for those leads that are perfectly like not no equity, but 0 to 10% equity to the best of our ability. So that's something we could definitely run in this new software we got. We just got it a couple days ago, and we started scrubbing some lists through there and setting it all up. And we're still working on that and kind of making tweaks to get the best data possible out of that. And that's a good point though that you bring up, because I know like those markets, for example, those more higher end houses in those higher end markets that get more appreciation than other markets and have higher ARVs, those are going to probably have more discrepancy in terms of how accurate those lists are with what we're seeing in like the Midwest markets.
Right.
So that's something.
And I want to add on to that. We did make a tweak in terms of what the highest purchase price is now. From now on, we cut it down to 550, because most of those high-end homes, it doesn't really make sense to do subject to for those types of homes we're seeing. And hybrids could always work. So the only thing when you're dealing with a home that has more than, I would say, 10% equity is that they're going to have to carry some of that equity they have in the deal.
All right. So what I'm doing essentially does make sense. Like sort of trying eliminating those ones with like 200 plus K equity, and you know, kind of really searching through the list for the ones that are like, you know, less, like way less than that actually.
Yeah, please request me your list, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, that'd be great. All right, cool.
Yeah, because I feel like our data now will kind of help you reduce some of the time you're spending trying to cut properties and just call on better properties.
Yeah, because I was getting frustrated with a lot of the realtors this week, and was like, I started out for as good as I started out on Monday, and I thought I had like made some headway, and then like as the week progressed, I'm like, God, I want to just murder some of these people.
Yeah.
like I mean, they can't hang up with you quick enough. Like it's It's actually kind of comical. I'm like in the middle of saying, "Hey, goodbye, have a great day," and they're like, "Click, cool, all right, see you, buddy."
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Um,
we're definitely making tweaks to that, and hopefully very soon we'll
all right.
have a lot more. I mean, because this is what most people are doing in terms of pulling lists and data. Like most people that are wholesaling are doing exactly what we're doing, but we're trying to
Mhm.
pay extra and use these other tools that we haven't used before. So it's kind of a bit of a learning curve on our end for making it as exact and precise as possible. Because we'll pull a list now and we'll have like 300 results pop up in that list, and we filter them through this new program we have, and then it's down to like 30. So we're
Okay,
still trying to
cool.
make tweaks with it and whatnot. And yeah, so we'll
All right,
definitely get you dialed in very soon.
excellent. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Can I add something to that? Because I'm
Yeah.
calling in the Tampa area, so I have been seeing a lot of the same thing, but I'm still making the calls because at the end of the day, what I'm trying to find is what is the seller's motivation? What is the reason behind them needing to sell? And even if the home has a lot of equity, the seller may want to mitigate their capital gains tax and would be open to doing seller finance and not getting a lot of money up front either. So um I'm still, making those calls, or even if the agent with that particular house is not, or maybe the seller is not open to that, but the agent may have another property. So I'm finding the same things in my list, but I'm still making the calls just to understand what the seller's motivation is behind selling their property.
Yeah. No, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I still think it's great practice too. And there's still deals, of course, that can be pulled out of that. And then also building relationships with these agents. Like not all these lists are going to be 100% accurate and perfect. And even with us spending a lot of money on these new tools and implementing them, there's still going to be, error in those lists. We're just trying to minimize it. But yeah, even still speaking with an agent and going through the reps and going through the motions could still yield a deal, like you said. And it's also one, practice reps, and then two, building relationships with those agents for potential future deals in the pipeline that fit that criteria. So I definitely say still, you know, be making calls on them. Just yeah, like you said, there is, some they're not the ideal candidate for a low equity, zero entry fee sub two in those kind of markets. So we are really trying to kind of tweak the data to hopefully filter those out and really just try to be only getting those 10% equity or less sort of deals. Yeah. And who was about to talk?
I was just about to say something. So I know you guys are using the list generator, and it just gives you 300 properties every time, basically.
No,
Or
no. So yes, that was just an example I said of like 300. So we'll go on PropStream and we're looking by county, city, whatever it may be, and then we're putting in our filters on PropStream for estimated value, time sold, things
okay,
like that.
and then you're using another program to even dial it down some more, because I am pulling kind of my own list,
Yeah.
just because, and I'm spending the time kind of looking at, okay, what's the mortgage balance compared to the purchase price and stuff, just so I'm able to kind of get dial it down a little bit as well. But I just was curious about kind of the other program that you're putting into to kind of get the information even better to make sure on each listing.
Yeah, yeah. So we're using another program too, where once we pull a list from PropStream, then we filter it through that program. And I don't know how it works. Alex and I were kind of talking about it. We were thinking, I don't know how Alex was explaining it, but like he's done like reselling before with like sneakers and stuff like that, and he was or computer parts, whatever it was, like drives. But he was saying he's thinking it like just skips through. How did you explain it, Alex? It's pretty cool the way it works,
So
but
so basically it's a script that is running Zillow to pull the purchase price and then compare the prop stream data to what Zillow's purchase price is and see what percent amount of equity is estimated to be in the deal. None of those numbers will ever be 100% accurate just because they're coming from like a third party servicer, basically. But they're pretty close to what most mortgages will be around.
yeah.
So that's basically what it does.
Yeah. So we just got that a couple days ago and we're just starting to kind of implement it and tweak it with that and see what sort of results that'll yield. So Yeah, it's definitely really refining down that prop stream data, because anyone who's using prop stream, batch, privy, whatever they're pulling lists on and doing that stuff on, this should really give us a lot better data than them. So I'm looking forward to having that fully dialed in. Was that it, Chris, or is there something else?
Have you guys ever considered trying out some direct to seller, or are we just some
Yeah.
agent outreach?
So that's one thing Alex and I actually were talking to some agent in Arizona about, and I've talked to some other people that I've worked with in the past, because I used to do pretty much only direct to seller. But here's the thing with direct to seller. The only direct to seller that would be worth people's time and that they would enjoy would be PPC or PPL, where we're running Google ads to get inbound hot leads, or we're paying per lead. And usually the average cost per lead on that is like $200 to $400 a lead. And so that's like someone with a lot of experience who's closed a lot of deals. That's like when you're running PPC, like you'll have a closer for that. Like for someone I was working with previously, like 4 or 5 months ago, I was helping them close PPC leads, and it was like hot inbound leads. So that's something we want to do definitely in the future, possibly. But in terms of like one of my old partners I was talking to, he's like, well, what if we start doing, because I don't know, Alex, like me and Alex were talking about this too. Like if we're doing direct to seller, a lot of direct to seller is like needle and haystack, just hoping you find motivation there, meaning like you're calling lists that are high equity, non-owner occupied, things like that, where you're probably making 200 dials for one warm lead. Whereas with at least on market, don't get me wrong, you're still going to get a lot of rejection, a lot of agents that are not interested. But from newer people starting out from a learning perspective, there's a higher probability to get deals done. And then you're also going to be having conversations with agents versus, okay, I just did 200 dials. I got a couple FUs. I got a couple, I'm going to sue you. Get me off your list. Stop calling me. And then I got one person who said, maybe, what's your offer? And that's how direct to seller usually goes when you're cold calling. So that's why we're not doing that. Whereas direct to agent, it's a lot better environment to learn in. And it's also much better for the creative deals, because we're primarily wanting to do subject twos, occasional hybrids with some seller financing involved. But when you're doing direct to seller, it's just the results are going to be going to be terrible. And it's going to be very discouraging. Not saying like calling agents and, having agents being rude isn't discouraging. I know that is, but trust me, direct to seller is really a grind, and it's like a needle in a haystack. So would you say I explained that correctly, Alex? Would you agree with that? I don't think it's a good use of time right now, at least for targeting direct to seller.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Yeah. Direct to seller sounds amazing, but then when you consider everything Jack just said, and the fact that you're able to build relationship with people who actually like talking about real estate, it's just a much better environment to learn in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
and I agree on that. That's kind of the same stance I was thinking. It was more just like for the future. I know it's direct to agent more learning, but because I know it gets more costly direct to seller, but just wondering for the future, and when I'm able to put more money into getting some leads, just kind of your guys' opinion on it. So
Yeah,
just told me kind of some of the stuff I was thinking and some other stuff as well.
gotcha. Yeah, no, I've done a decent amount of the PPC stuff, and even then, it's like you're paying $200 to $400 a lead typically, and maybe the conversion is like 1 out of 10 of those. But then you're anticipating a 10 to 15K assignment fee, so it's like, okay, I just spent 3 to 4K to then make 10 to 15, and it's good and scalable. But at the same time, I'm focused more so on trying to get these creative finance deals to have all these other exit strategies with that we're going to go over here shortly, versus like these cash deals. When you're doing direct to seller, it's really not much of kind of this model. It's more so of, hey, these are just cash wholesale deals for like 90% of scenarios. Yeah.
Add something real quick, or ask something?
Yeah,
Right?
sure.
I was speaking with somebody a couple weeks ago, and they said that a lot of people were switching to low equity on market direct to agent outreach as opposed to direct to seller because of the economy.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I asked him why that was, and I didn't completely understand his explanation.
Yeah.
Do you know why he might have said that?
Yeah, so that's actually why I switched up like my entire business model of what I was doing previously. Um, because you have sellers who kind of have the mindset of, hey, interest rates haven't risen a ton, the economy's great, houses are selling pretty high. And then you have buyers who are like, the economy doesn't look too good right now. We expect housing prices to go down. And then now you have a seller wanting 90% ARV, and then you have the buyer who wants to come in at 60% ARV or 50% ARV, where because I noticed that when I was wholesaling kind of just starting like a year and a half ago, that's when the market was just starting to shift and it was getting really tough because our buyers on our buyers list for these cash deals, they were wanting these deals at a bigger discount than what they previously did 6 months before that. And that environment's still kind of in the same boat. And then also too, it's just super appealing right now for these low equity sub two deals because with interest rates being this high right now, who wouldn't want to come in and, take over an interest rate at 3%? And that's the thing too, where um, you're essentially with the direct agent that I like too, is the motivation's clearly there because it's listed on market. So clearly that person wants to sell, whereas a lot of the direct to seller, unless it's inbound like PPC, you're just reaching out to them and hoping they want to sell. So a lot of people, like you said, their whole business model has shifted since the market shifted in the last like year and a half, and they've gone from the direct to seller to like the direct to agent, or they've been paying for like inbound marketing. And yeah, I was doing the direct to seller for like 8 months, and I was noticing that shift heavily, where I wanted to pivot into doing more of the creative stuff, which is kind of why I branched off and started doing this here. And I guess a little bit before this too, I was running PPC and also doing direct to agent to also get those creative deals. But mainly it's just a market shift, the economy, interest rates rising, buyers being more stingy with their offers. And then also another thing too is it costs more to borrow money. So that means their loans they're getting, their construction loans, materials, things like that are going to be more expensive. So they're more tight on their numbers. And then you have, of course, if a seller's super motivated, they will come down in price. But a lot of these people aren't motivated enough to just give a 50% discount on market value. And it's just a lot tougher economy and environment for those cash deals.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Any other questions from anyone else before I screen share here? All right. So Alex, I was thinking of going over the one in Norman. That's what I was going to screen share on the LOI underwriting generator. Do you think that's a good place to do that? I was just thinking that's what I'd go over.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would do that, and then also just touch some points from both of those documents I sent in Discord. I think both those could give everyone a little more insight on what exactly we're doing to see if it's a good deal or not.
Yeah, totally. So before we do that, then I guess, I'll go over one of those docs. So yeah, and I know we've kind of gone over this and touched on things in general, but one of the things that people are always looking for is, of course, like the cash on cash return, which is how much the money I put in, how much of return is this going to give me annually? So like I've had some people before say, a lot of people are looking for 10% entry fees or less, just because that usually yields you a pretty good cash on cash return. And there are some risks with sub two and whatnot as well. So most people just in the general community are looking for 10% entry fees or less, meaning if the purchase price of the home, the remaining balance is 280K, they're going to want to be in at less than 28K most likely. Of course, there are exceptions to it. And that's where it kind of gets confusing. And this will come with time. Like I'm trying to keep it pretty surface level so it doesn't get confusing. But like, for example, Alex and I are looking at, who sent this one in? I'm trying to see. I think it was, I think Paul sent this one. Is Paul in the call? Yeah, Paul's in the call. Yeah, Paul sent one in, and I've seen, a decent amount of these too, where they're like deals that don't really cash flow as long-term rentals at all, but they're in like Phoenix Metro, or they're in a nicer appreciation market like Vegas or something like that, where cash on cash return really doesn't matter as much, which would mean some people would be willing to pay like closer to like a 13 or 14% entry fee on something that doesn't cash flow as a long-term rental. just because it's a nice newer build in a bigger appreciation market. So that's one thing I've noticed too. So that's kind of exceptions to that rule of, hey, 10% entry and you're wanting kind of a minimal set amount of cash flow. So there is always going to be exceptions like that too, but just for like rule of thumb basics, if it's not in like a major metro like Vegas, Phoenix, Dallas, Tampa, Miami, you know, those major cities, you're typically going to have to be at that 10% entry or less. So one big thing to look at is what's going to be the cash flow on that property. Wait, let me look at this here. Yeah, no, exactly, Derek. Yeah, and we try to get in as low as possible, but then the unfortunate thing is too, like sometimes there's competition. Well, of course there's always competition, like you guys have said. There's a bunch of other people mentioning sub too. So especially in like those Phoenix markets and those larger main cities, you're going to have other people making offers and it almost becomes a bidding war until these people kind of back out. So it'd be great. And this one I'm going to share, it's a pretty low entry that I got it at, but I wish all of them can be low entries. Sometimes it's just timing. You know, there's a lot of factors that go into it. But in terms of the cash flow and whatnot, of course, excluding what I just said, those major nice appreciation cities, people are always going to be wanting, of course, cash flow on a property because why pay a $30,000 entry fee if I'm not going to make any money each month and if I'm going to lose money? So one of the most common strategies is, of course, just long-term rental, renting it out to a long-term tenant. Other ones, short-term rental, midterm rental. Short-term rental would be the Airbnb strategy. Midterm rental would be travel nurses, insurance claims, things like that. And then you're going to have pad splits, rent by the room scenarios, where you're either adding additional rooms to a house and renting those individually. Rent by the room is kind of similar, but you're not actually making construction changes and additions to the house. So that is technically different than pad split. I haven't done any of those myself personally yet, but definitely want to. And then what we're mainly focused on right now for exit strategies is going to be the wrap. So essentially, we're taking a deal subject to at those specific terms, and then we are seller financing it, aka wrapping it to an end buyer at a higher purchase price and a higher interest rate, and then we become the bank and net that monthly spread. So I'll dive more deeper into that when I share my screen on that deal we're going to break down. But that's what I like the most right now is the wrap exit strategy. Then also the long-term rental. Then as we kind of get that stabilized and scaled, or if we find partners, then we might start really exploring pad splits and other options too. It's just I have some concerns with pad splits, but I know people that are doing them and don't have any problems. Another thing people look at is how long will the money be in the deal. So that has to do with partially cash on cash return. So if I'm investing 30K in a deal, how long is it going to take for me to get my money back? So the thing that's really great with the wraps is if I'm buying a long-term rental, right, and it's going to cash flow $400 a month and my down payment is, or my entry fee is 30K, I'm going to have those funds locked up in that deal probably for 10 plus years until it's an infinite return, meaning my entry fee was paid back to me from my cash flow. So some people don't, a lot of people hate that, at least that are in this community, because they're in this niche. All they see is creative finance real estate deals. But if you can find a private money lender or a partner or someone who has money that's outside of this niche, they might be like, wow, this is great. And that's one thing I need to do. I have a lot of funding partners and money partners within this community that will fund high cash on cash return deals. But I really think you could get so much more out of it by finding like lending partners that are not in the niche of real estate. They're just people that have money. So that's one thing too, where with the wraps, like you'll get your money back very quickly on these wraps. Like the example I'm going to break down, we're essentially our entry fee is like 10K. The house is worth 140K. The end buyer is going to come down with a 10% down payment for us. And that 10% down payment of 14K is going to cover our entry fee and some. So we'll make like 4K right off the rip once we find that buyer. And then we'll have that spread that we create on the note of like $500 a month. And sorry, I don't know if that's making sense. It'll look better when I run it down on the spreadsheet. The wraps are definitely like one of the more confusing exit strategies to do. So do let me know if there's any questions or anything like that. Then the main,
can I backtrack real quick?
yeah, go ahead.
You said that you were concerned about a couple things with pad split. I'm curious what you're concerned about.
Yeah, so I know people that do it and they make a lot of money and it's great. But when you just think about like rent by the room scenarios and doing construction on your house and furnishing those rooms, you're going to have a slightly higher entry fee. And then also too is what's going to be the quality of tenant or person renting those rooms. Um, that's just my concern because I've heard some horror stories of that happening. Don't get me wrong, I've heard horror stories with long-term rentals and all that stuff. I just feel like there's a higher probability of things to go wrong with a pad split than a typical long-term rental. And then also you're having those upfront higher renovation costs and whatnot. But those are offset by the higher cash flow though. So of course with the pad split, if you're renting each room for $600 a month and say the house was a three bed, one bath, and you were able to convert it like a garage or something. So now you have 5 beds, one bath, and you're able to rent each of those rooms for $600 a month. You have a $3K like spread there. Whereas if you just kept it as a long-term rental, it would have been like a $1,400 spread. So you just increased your cash flow by 1,600. So that's very appealing about it. It's just I don't have experience doing those yet, and there could be some because I haven't done fix and flips either. So that's my thing too. I definitely want to expand into that, but I want to kind of minimize construction rehab budgets and things like that because you know how those go. There's always something that comes up, something goes wrong, more holding costs, an extra 5K on the budget. And then you're like, oh crap, that wasn't as nice as I thought it was going to be. But I mean, Alex and I have talked about this, and there was one we were looking at in Florida that looked like it could maybe work as a pad split. But we would need to definitely bring in a partner who would fund it and has done pad splits before, which I know we have one in the network, but something I'm open to in the future, just not something I'm super gung ho about right now at all. Because turnkey properties are always much better. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. And then so in terms of the main types of creative acquisitions, sub 2, which is what we're mainly focusing on. Seller finance, which is essentially when there's no mortgage in place, you're giving them a certain amount down, a down payment, and then you agree upon monthly payments you're making until that balance is paid off in full. Hybrid, we've talked about those a bit earlier. That's the combination of the subject to and the seller finance or carry. So that means if a deal has 200K equity in it, we could come in, we could take over their existing payments, then maybe give them 20K down, and then they would carry that remaining 180K balance for $200 principal only monthly payments. You know, there's a whole bunch of different scenarios that you can structure with that. Then you're going to have a lease option where basically it's almost like a rent to own situation where you have a tenant in place and they have the option to buy the house after X amount of years, whatever you agree upon. Then you're going to have novations. That's basically, it's almost like a net listing where essentially you agree upon a price with the seller. This is more of a direct to seller thing. I'm just covering this because it's just on our note sheet here, and it's good to know anyway. But the novation is basically like a net listing where you agree upon a price with that seller that they will net, and then basically they give you the legal right to market their property on the MLS. So it doesn't really make any sense because it's like, wait a second, why wouldn't I just use a real estate agent and get the most money out of this property as possible? But essentially with the novation, the way you kind of pitch it is we offer renovation. Like when you list it, we'll say, ask about renovation upgrades and things like that. So we'll basically tell the seller that we have a concierge service where it's a hands-off process for you. We handle the negotiations. We handle potential renovations that a potential buyer wants done. We also will make renovations to comply with FHA because they're usually very strict with who they qualify and what they'll lend on. And we tell them, we'll get you the exact price you want. And we will just net, the small difference of what we sell it at. But of course, we're going to be able to sell it at a higher premium because we are going to put in money and work with renovations and handle all, the negotiations and things like that. And you'd be surprised how many people actually are open to that. I've only done one novation myself, but I have partners that do a lot of them. And that doesn't really suit what I'm doing now because these properties we're going after are on the MLS. So you can't really do that, but that's just one strategy. Then the land contract agreement for sale. Basically, the deed stays in the seller's name until the buyer fulfills the terms of the agreement and basically pays off the house. So that's one way to officially avoid due on sale, is by doing a land contract, contract for deed. Yeah, so those are just a couple strategies there. You don't get the tax benefits with that though. With the land contract, that's a downside. So a lot of people do try to avoid that, but then you also don't have to worry about the risk of due on sale with the land contract. Was there anything you wanted to touch on, Alex, there? Is Alex still in here?
No, you're good, man.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna screen share now. Let me see. 1 second here. All right. 1 sec. All right, so this is a deal we have in escrow right now. The purchase price is $139,000. That's what it was listed at. The underlying balance on the property was $126,000. That was the remaining mortgage, and it was a 5.6% interest rate. So 5.6% interest rate. The house as is worth about 135, 140. The monthly payment we have is $1,069, and it rents for $1,000 to $1,100 a month. So if you look at that number breakdown there, you'd probably be like, the interest rate isn't that great. The interest rate is like towards the higher end of which we will go. Like usually we'll say 5% is tops. Sometimes there's exceptions. 6% is absolute tops. And this is kind of one of those exceptions. Interest rate isn't great, 5.6%. And then closing costs estimated $2,500. The cash to seller we're paying is $3,000, and then there's the finder's fee right there of $1,000. Then the agent commission 3%. That's $3,800. So just based off that information there, my calculator tells me that my entry fee is going to be 7.8%. So that's a pretty good entry fee. Of course, that's not including the holding costs. So holding costs are how long I'm holding the property until I start cash flowing, essentially. So if it's a long-term rental and it takes me 2 months to find a tenant, then I have 2 months of holding costs, which would be me covering the PITI, which is the $1,069. So I would have 2 of those. So that would be like 2150 or something like that. Same with whatever exit strategy it is. So in our case, we're wrapping this one. So I'm assuming we're probably going to have maybe two months of holding costs. So then that puts us at about a 9.4% entry fee there. But the thing is, even with our holding costs and that 9.4% entry, we're out of pocket 12 grand on this deal. I think it would actually be less because I think I'm being conservative, but I think we can move it in a month, not 2 months. So we are out of pocket 12 grand. Does anyone have any questions with just this upper area? I wouldn't look at any of this other stuff yet, but just this upper area that I showed from this blue area and above. I mean, I think it's pretty self-explanatory though, just with what it was listed at, the underlying mortgage, closing costs, cash to seller, the finder's fee that we're paying, and then also to the agent commission. So then that brings us to 12.5K, including the holding costs. But just for this example, I'm going to delete the holding costs because we don't know exactly yet. So 10.3K. Then with this calculator here, you'd have your different exits. This one here also gives you the option to show for the, if you were doing a hybrid or like a seller finance amount, you would insert that here, but this one is just a straight sub 2 deal. So there is nothing for me to fill in here. Then above, I just add the interest rate, 5.6. The principal and interest was $729. The taxes and insurance were about $340. These aren't exact numbers. I couldn't find the mortgage statement, but I know it was $1,069 a month. So I'm pretty sure, and I know the PI was that, so pretty sure that's almost spot on accurate. And then long-term rental strategy. This one really doesn't cash flow at all once you subtract if our payment's 1069 and we're subtracting vacancy, repairs and things like that, we're probably losing a couple $100 a month on this deal as a long-term rental. But this is what we're trying to mainly do anyway. So this is where the wrap strategy comes into place. So with a wrap, typically with a wrap, it's when you're basically seller financing a house to someone who can't afford or doesn't qualify, excuse me, for a traditional type of purchase. So they can't qualify for a traditional purchase using their own credit because their credit is bad. You know, they might have really low credit, recent bankruptcy, something like that. So essentially all we have to do is have them go through an RMLO and show that they have monthly income where they can afford those monthly payments. That's all that's all that needs to be done. So a lot of like 1099 sales guys, you know, people that face bankruptcies, things like that. There's a very large buyer pool for wrap buyers who can't qualify traditionally. Then even some traditional people, if they really like a house, they will go this route than traditional financing. But usually it's that first niche that I kind of talked about, who are the wrap buyers. So in terms of how you can sell something on a wrap, usually whatever the fair market value is of the house on a wrap, you can usually sell something about 10% higher, in some cases a little more than 10%. So if the house we were looking at was worth, it appraised for like 136, comps are showing it's worth closer to 140, 135 to 140. So if we can add an additional 10% on that, that would be like about a 15K boost to the purchase price of what we could sell it to a wrap buyer on. So that would mean we could likely sell it at 150K. So if we sell it at 150K, usually for wrap buyers, we're going to want, you know, 10% down or something like that. And if they give us 10% down, that would be 15K. And so basically right there with that wrap buyer's down payment that they would give us, which would be 15 grand, that would cover, and don't get me wrong, this is just quicker numbers, but of course, you know, there are going to be some closing costs. We're going to have to pay for an RMLO, which is probably like $500. There probably is about $1,000 or so of missing expenses between setting up new entities and also paying for our transaction coordinator and stuff like that. So there's probably $1,500 of expenses that I didn't include for that are built into this. But just to make the numbers simpler, down payment of 15K, our entry fee to get this deal was $10,370. Add, you know, 1,000 or two to that, so that would bring us to 12K. So essentially, if our entry fee total for everything is 12K and we have a wrap buyer coming in with a 15 grand down payment, this is a hot market in Oklahoma City, just outside Oklahoma City by University of Oklahoma, where we think we could probably move this in, you know, a month and a half or less. That means we would be making 3 grand between the 15K and the 12K. If 12K our entry, 15K the down payment, we'd make 3 grand instantly right off the rip, where it would be an infinite return. We wouldn't have money in the deal. And then we would cash flow monthly off the spread on that note on the wrap. Sorry, feel free to interrupt if this is like confusing, because I've been looking at this stuff for a while now. And like the first time I heard about it for a while, I was like, what is this? Like it's kind of confusing. But once it kind of clicks and makes sense, you like realize the potential in this strategy where it's like actually just absurd.
So I do have a question. What happens to, so the principal balance remaining there would be 135. The loan balance was like
126.
126. What happens to that difference?
Yeah. So I would have basically a spread in equity there. So in my note, I just created 9K in equity. So essentially, once that person I wrap the deal to or sell the house to, if they sell it or refi, they have to pay off my note first. So the note they have with me is 135K. The note that I took over sub 2 is 126. So essentially in that deal, I've created 9K equity. So basically, once that wrap buyer decides to sell or refi, I net 9K. We pay off that first sub 2 mortgage that we took over with the 135K they pay us, and that leaves me with a 9K spread that I just pocket.
So the taking over payments, you keep that still, it doesn't transfer to the new person.
We do a, like with the third party servicing company, we have them basically wrap all this stuff together. So that third party servicing company, we're having those payments being made on that sub 2 deal every single month on the first balance, which was the 126K.
Right.
And then that end buyer, they're also doing the third party servicing, making payments directly to the third party servicer. So the third party servicer then pays the first note off with, and of course we're going to have some escrow funds in there in balance just in case the wrap buyer misses a payment or something like that. But then we're just netting the spread between those two differences in payments. So that's how that would work. Sorry, did that answer that question, or was that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome. Yeah, and there's another one that I'm looking for a buyer on it right now. And I've had it marketed for about a week, where the spread on the notes is really crazy. Like we have a 95K sub 2 balance at 2.7% interest. And then we're marketing it right now. I think we just dropped it in price. I have to check with the agent, but we're marketing it right now at 170. So we should have, it'll end up probably moving with a 150K remaining balance and then a 95K note. So that's like 55K equity I have right there in the note. So once that wrap buyer sells or refis, they have to pay me off first, and then I just make 55 grand. So pretty cool strategy, because a lot of these you can get your money in and out, sometimes instantly, sometimes within a year. Alex and I have another one in escrow right now that looks really solid, where it's like it'll probably be anywhere from $1,300 to $1,800 a month cash flow that we're splitting, and then from the buyer's down payment, it should cover most of our entry, where it's almost like an infinite return instantly. And with the wrap, you don't have to worry about maintenance, tenants, vacancy, anything like that. You're just the bank who holds the note and just gets a monthly check. So the wraps are super cool. And of course, too, with the wraps, you can usually charge a premium. So premium meaning one in the purchase price. Like I said, you can usually add about a 10% increase on market value on the wrap to the end buyer, just because they typically can't qualify traditionally and you're helping them out. Some people say 10 to 20. I don't really see 20. It's usually just slightly higher, like closer to 10%. But then also interest rate, you can usually go a couple percent higher than the current market rate. So the current market rate right now is pretty close to 8. And it really just depends. This is one of those things where it's like everything is, it's not all black and white. Just like what I was saying earlier, like, hey, if a deal doesn't cash flow at all, but if it's in Phoenix Metro in a nice area, new build, someone will probably buy it above a 10% entry. This is another scenario where like I couldn't wrap a house on a 12% interest rate in Dallas on a brand new build that is worth 400K, because that monthly payment would be absurd. But for a $140,000 house in Oklahoma City, that's kind of older and slightly cheaper and a lower entry. If I'm charging 11% interest on that remaining balance versus 11% interest on, like 11% interest on 135K is a lot more manageable than 11% interest on 600K, right? The difference in payments will be absurd. So in these scenarios with these home prices less than 200K, you can usually wrap them in that 10 to 12% range. So here, what our spread would be if we wrap it at, well, let's look at 10% first. So we wrap it at 10%. And this one, we pretty much have no money in the deal instantly. Like we'll have, like this says negative. This number is incorrect though, because this negative throws off the calculator, but essentially we're pocketing like $4,000 instantly off the deal once we get the wrap buyer in place. And then our monthly spread is going to be $455 a month that we're making just cash flow off the wrap. Let's say here we do a 12% interest rate. I'm not too confident with 12. I think we'll probably end up at 11 or 10 on this one. But if we did a 12, that would be $660 a month cash flow off that note, off that spread, which is pretty nice. Typical average wraps are usually about $800 a month cash flow. But this one is a scenario where it's a 5.6% interest rate. This is like a base hit deal, but the thing that I like about it is the entry fee so low and the risk is very low, where we get our entry in and out super quickly. So that's why it's appealing. But let's say like worst case scenario, we wrap this at like 9%. If we wrap it at 9%, we're still making $357 a month. And then let's say we can't move it at 150 for some odd reason. We move it at 145, 15% down, 9% interest. That's still $300 a month. So with this deal, it's going to be very hard to lose. I mean, like when we're buying these deals, we're making sure we can't lose on it. And then worst case scenario, we have a rental property that's less than 2 miles away from University of Oklahoma that will break even as a long-term rental. But I'm like 99% confident we can wrap this at those terms that I just showed. And then this one too, we have a balloon. So we actually have a balloon in place at 10 years. The seller wanted a balloon. So within 10 years for that wrap buyer, we have to let them know that, you know, they have to either refi or sell or whatever it may be within 10 years. Because that balance is due in full to us in 10 years, because we have to pay off the seller in 10 years. That's not a problem. It can become a problem less than 10 years, because it's going to scare away some buyers if they have to refi or sell or whatever it may be within 10 years. A lot of people aren't thinking 10 plus years down the line. Like if you're trying to wrap something with a balloon at 3 to 5 years, that's going to be a lot harder and that's going to be a problem. But 10 years is so far down the line where it's like, I'm not even concerned about that balloon at all.
I do have a question. I know you said you're
Yeah.
putting RMLOs to see what they're getting monthly payments. Are you vetting them any further than that to make sure they are gonna you trust them fully to make those payments so you're not going under, or is that
Yeah.
just
Well, honestly, man, like from a business perspective, of course, like if we're selling a house to someone, we really, you know, of course I want the best for people and whatnot, but it is not against it wouldn't hurt me if they defaulted, because they're putting, you know, they're putting 15K down. They're giving me a 15K down payment. So if they missed a monthly payment or something, we would have the same sort of structure there, like a performance deed where the property would get deeded back to us. Maybe we would do 45 days or something slightly different where we get our property back if they miss payments on us. And then maybe we'll have to foreclose on them, whatever, but we still get to keep their 15K down payment. And then we just rinse and repeat the process and go find a new wrap buyer. But of course, the RMLO qualifies them and make sure, you know, income wise, they can afford the payment and whatnot. So they're definitely being vetted. It's not just throwing random people in there and hoping they can make the payment. But I'm not concerned about that. Like I know people that wrap deals and they had, one guy had like a turnaround of 3 different buyers in a 5-year span. And he just kept the down payments. Of course, I don't want to do that, but just I'm saying from an investment standpoint, I'm not really too worried because we'll be getting, you know, 15K from a new end buyer's down payment if that became a problem. What could be an issue with this though is if someone did that in 4 years from now, and then that means I have a balloon in place that I have to pay off to that seller in 5 years. So it would be hard for me to find a new wrap buyer with that balloon in place. But I would have already got my entry fee back. I would have cash flowed a decent amount. We'd probably be able to renegotiate or try to figure something out. Or essentially, worst case scenario, if we couldn't refi it ourselves or something, then the seller would get their house back. I mean, we wouldn't let that happen. We'd figure something out. But that's the only issue that could come into play if that happens on a balloon. If someone defaults, then trying to get a new person in time who would be fine with having to refi out and, you know, whatever time period's left on that term.
And also, I know you're talking about a deal you had for a week that you're trying to find a buyer for. Are you always getting with agents and getting them to list them for you?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's it.
Yeah. So it really just depends. Like this agent in OKC, I'm really cool with. And I want to make it a win-win. So he always brings his deals to me and doesn't show any sub-2 deals to anyone else. So I've already kind of built that relationship with him by me showing him how this shit works, explaining it to him, and then also me paying him a fee on the back end. So he gets his commission in the front end, and then he helps me find a wrap buyer on the back end, and then I pay him, you know, a couple $1,000s for doing that. So I'm doing that in the sake of the relationship, you know, just to keep him only bringing deals to me. So I'm just trying to do stuff like that. So of course, in that scenario, it's great. But at the same time, I could list this with a flat fee broker myself. And sorry, I was just looking at the chat. I can list that with a flat fee broker myself and not have to pay him a couple of grand, because basically he's just listing it on Facebook Marketplace right now, running a cheap Facebook ad and pushing it out in his local groups. But he's an agent out there with a large network. We'll see how this one goes with him. I already spoke with him though, and I said, hey, if this doesn't get a lot of traction in a couple of weeks, let's readjust, and then I will list it with a flat fee broker as well for like $300 on the MLS, saying it's owner finance only with the terms, and then post it on Craigslist. Like there's a lot of ways you can go about it. Bandit signs, there's a whole bunch of stuff. But I mean, we have such a large spread on that deal, man, because I'm not going in blindly to these where it's like, okay, I think this one will work. Like, of course, because we don't want to deal with a big mess. But this one, we have a 95K sub-2 balance, and the house is worth like 160K as is, 150, 160K as is. So we have so much spread there where worst case scenario, we just dump it on the market and make like 20 grand. But this one, you know, I'm willing to hold holding costs for 2 months if we have to move it and just slowly price drop and adjust. But there's a lot of weird external factors. Like there's a big fair going on, like the Oklahoma State Fair right now. And I was talking to the agent and he's noticed a dip in showings and people wanting to buy houses for the last week and a half since this fair has been going on. Which is surprising how little trends and things like that actually affect like local markets and stuff. So maybe that's just bullshit for why he hasn't gotten much traction on our house yet, or maybe that's true. But yeah. And then I'm looking at here. Do your contracts ever include a balloon extension provision? Alex already answered that. Yes, they can. Yeah. So any questions from anyone on that? Let me stop share here. Any questions from anyone on that?
Say you get a deal, it's not fitting your long-term rental or your wraps that you're usually doing. Are you looking to step into something like a midterm rental or that type of stuff?
Yeah, totally,
Well-
totally. Definitely. And that's the thing, midterm rental, pad split, something like that, totally, or we just end up assigning it. But Alex and I are trying to keep as many of these as possible. So definitely lots of opportunity. And I have a lot of money partners too, where, you know, if needed, when we're running out of funds, because we're doing a lot of deals, then we can have people come in and, you know, cover our entry fees. Yeah. Any other questions? Gloria, or someone unmuted and spoke, I thought. Okay, maybe not. Anyone have any questions or anything? Was there any parts that didn't really make sense with that?
Where do you get this formula for the spreadsheet for wrap?
So this is actually kind of cool. So this is an LOI. Oh, well, I'm not screen sharing anymore. Let me screen share really quick. So this one I actually paid for. This one's let me. Sorry, I just had to mute someone there. So this one I actually paid for. There are some similar like free spreadsheets though, but this one actually generates an LOI. So up here where you see generate LOI based off these terms, like I put in the address up here, whatever it may be, I type in the agent's name, and then I'm basically underwriting my deal. And then when I click generate LOI right here, it will then create those LOI templates with all that stuff filled in. So like some of you before where we've sent you guys LOIs to send to the agents, this is how we do it. So I can quickly, not quickly, it probably takes 10 minutes. I can actually like underwrite the property when I have the numbers, see what it
I
looks
have a
like.
property example. Like if you have a property for 400K, how do you underwrite? Like if it is on a like a 5-point change, like 5.4 interest rate.
Yeah. So if you want to just give me some random numbers, I can just fill it in right now. So you said a
Let's
property
do 400 change. Yeah.
listed at 400K. Let's say the underlying mortgage is 380.
Let's make it 390 though. Yeah.
390. Okay. 390. Closing costs, we'll say about 3K. Cash to seller. In this case, we'll say 1K just because there's, yeah. So like, and this will show you too on a traditional sale, the seller would be losing here about 22 grand traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this tool is pretty cool. Then agent commission 3%, that'd be 11K. So right there, you're at a 4.15% entry, 16,730 out of pocket, but that doesn't include holding costs. So we would need the PITI and like a breakdown of all this stuff to really get exact numbers.
Like I can give you a PITI. Maybe like PITI is like $1,650 a month.
Just randomly do the name. John is the agent. Wait, what'd you say for PITI?
Let's make it like 1,800K, 1,800 for month.
Okay, 1,800, and
Five,
then
500 per month. Let's say taxes and insurance.
okay, and then what interest rate?
Let's say 5.4.
5.4. Okay, so then that would show here. Yeah, the underlying payment would be $2,300 a month, the PITI. So then that's one thing too. It's like we don't have a house to look at example wise, but likely though, who knows, right? It's hard because if this was like a Midwest house, you're probably not going to be cash flowing a long-term rental with a $2,300 a month payment. You'd probably be breaking even or losing money. Because there's a couple I'm working on right now that are slightly similar, actually lower
Is there a
interest rate.
wrap option possible on such number?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So I'll look at the wrap. So let's say the house is actually worth about 390, kind of what it's at. Say just it kind of stagnated and didn't appreciate or lose value in like a year from when that owner had it. So let's say, and since we could add a slight premium on a wrap, let's say I wrap this at 410. Let's say I got 30K down, which is a little bit less than a 10% entry. Then let's say I wrapped it at 9%. So that would leave me with a 380K, or wait, underlying mortgage. Okay, so we actually probably wouldn't want to do that unless, just to be safe, because essentially if we did a 30K down payment here, we'd have an underlying balance on our wrap note at 380, but then we would owe 390 on the first one. So we wouldn't really want that, because then we would be negative 10K and we'd have to come out of pocket. I mean, you could have like a war chest set aside of cash flow that you're making that you're saving, and then have like a prepayment penalty to avoid it. But you wouldn't want to make it so it's underwater. You always want some sort of equity in the spread between the notes. So that could either mean I could up my purchase price, just for this example. Let's say we up our purchase price to 420, and then we say the down payment is 20K. So even with a down payment of 20K, like, what is it here? So the spread I'm making a month is $1,418. That's what I would make if I wrapped it at 9%. 20K down, 400K remaining balance. If I wrapped it at 9%, the spread between the 390 at 5.4 and the spread between this one would be 1,418 a month. Because the principal and interest on this 9% at 400 is 3,218. Yeah. So
is it positive through any strategy like wrap or sub 2?
Wait, sorry, can you say that again?
Is it better strategy for a wrap or a sub 2 for this kind of a case?
I would definitely say wrap, because I mean, we don't know what the house is like, right? So I'm just assuming that this house wouldn't cash flow or work as a long-term rental.
Mm-hmm.
So you would, you'd be underwater essentially. So like your PITI is 2,300. You could probably rent this. Let's just say it's a 3-bed, two bath house. Let's say you could rent it for 2K. So you're probably losing at least $300 a month, probably more. So that wouldn't really make sense as a long-term rental. Maybe it works as a midterm rental or rent by the room scenario. But like what I see here, I would try to wrap it, because if I could wrap it, that's my spread. My spread on a wrap at 9% interest is 1,400 a month. And let's say if I wanted to do, this would be very competitive. Say if I wanted to wrap it at 7% interest, if I couldn't move it at 9 or something, I could market it as lower than market rate, no banks, owner finance only. So say if I'm marketing it below the current asking rate of upper 7s or low 8s, I'd still be making $860 a month. And then I would be making a couple $1,000s instantly out of pocket, because my entry fee on this out of pocket, I would be spending about $17,000, not including holding costs. So I'd be spending 17K to get this deal. And then on a wrap, the end buyer's down payment at 20K would cover my entry. So I would be making a couple grand instantly, and then I'd be making that $800 spread a month. And then I'd also have, if their remaining balance was 400K, and this one was 390, I'd have a 10K spread in there of equity in the note that would be paid out to me once they refied or sold as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where did you get this sheet from? Like, is it a pace sheet?
I bought it from a member that's in sub 2. Yeah, I bought it from a member in sub 2. There are free ones though, honestly. I could speak with Alex, and since we're in sub 2, which is like the paid private group, you sign NDAs if it's PACE's documents and stuff, but I'm sure we might be able to share one, like an underwriting sheet that's free, that's very similar to this. I'll speak with Alex and see if we can find something to share to help like with underwriting and whatnot. It won't be this exact calculator that generates the LOI, but we could definitely probably find something that is very useful and similar to this.
Okay.
Yeah, so hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, I just saw your question, Rich. Yeah, I'll have to look through to see what it's called, or we could possibly share like a free one too, that isn't NDA'd from the private group, which I know there are free ones that I've used before that are still really good. I guess Alex left, so any questions from anybody here? I don't have any calls or anything planned for the next little while, so no need for me to rush off. So if anyone has questions or anything, oh, I guess Alex is here. Never mind. If anyone has questions or anything.
Which markets are you doing deals as of now? Very good. Like you get a lot of leads from.
Honestly, everywhere. I mean, preferably targeting kind of the Midwest regions, but really any like landlord friendly state. The reason being is, eviction laws, foreclosure laws, tenant laws, and things like that. That's why I prefer like the Midwest, like landlord friendly red states, just because those favor investors. Yeah, and I don't care. Like I'll tell people with the wraps, I don't care if it's not in a great area, because I'm not likely keeping it as a long-term rental. I'm keeping it as a wrap. So if someone else bought the house from me, I'm not responsible for repairs, maintenance, vacancies, anything like that. It's the end buyer in place who bought it from me. So like I'll tell people, as long as it's a decent populated city where I can find a buyer quickly, I don't really care. So it's a pretty broad buy box.
So population as in like what is the range you're looking at? Like 75K?
Oh, okay. Honestly, yeah, I'd say like 75, 100K all the way up to, I don't know. It's weird. It's one of those scenarios where it's like, you could do this with a $1.5 million house. So say if like there was one Alex and I were looking at that was like a 700K house in Alabama. I forgot who brought us this lead. Maybe they're on the call, but I talked it over with them why it wasn't a deal. And they weren't open to sub two anyway, it turns out. But basically the house was worth like 650K or something like that. And it was a 2% interest rate, where I was speaking with Alex and another one of our partners. And I'm like, there's no way we can move this. It doesn't work as the long-term rental. That home is worth 4x the median home price in that area. So super high-end home. But then someone said to me, he's like, we could literally wrap this at like a 4% interest rate and market it as, hey, this is a home way below current market value, like in terms of the interest rate. Because if they try to buy that traditionally now, they'd be paying 8%. Whereas with us, we could sell it at 4% and still have a spread there between the 2 and the 4 a month, which I don't know, that might be like $500. And then we would still get our money back instantly and some off their down payment. So it's really going to vary, but those are a lot trickier to deal with. Ideally, kind of in that range of that like $100,000 to $500,000 range, but you can make anything work with anything. It's just, a lot of it's just cost benefit. Like, what is my cost with this? Do I want to take on the risk with this $1.2 million house? Because if it takes me 4 months to find someone at that price, then I just, pissed away however much it was, holding costs, things like that.
So this 1.5 million house, is it through the agent you got this lead, or is this from the
That
seller?
was just an example. There wasn't a 1.5 house. The one I was talking about was 600K, and that one was from an agent. But then the agent checked with the seller, and the seller didn't want to do a sub two. But basically, I was looking at it because it was a higher end house for that area, because the average home price in that area was like 150. So that means the buyer pool is going to be super small if it's like a mansion for that city. So I'm just like, okay, what's our risk here? If we have a mansion in this city and we're trying to sell it, how long is it going to take to sell it, basically? So there's just a lot of stuff to analyze and look at from that perspective.
Okay, so apart from this sheet, you use other like any kind of help so that you can find if it is a right deal or not, because the numbers black and white on the sheet, are they reliable?
Yeah, there's definitely some other sheets. I'll speak with Alex and see if we can find some and share some too to help with underwriting. I see Derek commented here and said there's a free one too. I know we definitely have one that I can, we could add it to the helpful documents in the Discord on that page, useful documents. We could definitely add something like that here pretty soon.
Okay, so you need 3 different sheets to analyze a deal. Is it?
Or what do you mean about 3 different sheets?
I mean, like the one which you showed is writing for LOIs, and anything else which says like, okay, this deal is a positive deal or not a good deal for me. How do you distinguish between those?
Yeah, well, honestly, you don't even really need a sheet. Like I could have done that all on paper. It's just that LOI generator makes it super efficient and quick for me, where it's auto doing the math for me and auto generating. But I could literally do it on paper where I'm like, okay, writing down, I see the PIT's this is what it rents for. Here's my monthly payment. If I wrapped it at this percentage, I go to like mortgage calculator or noteunlimited.com and I see what that payment would be to the wrap buyer. And then I subtract and add. So you could do all this without any of these sheets and tools. It's just the reason we do this is because we have a lot of volume where, because I'm still like like analyzing a shit ton of these and I'm like, I need something more efficient than this just to do it with the volume. But like when I was kind of just starting out a while ago, like I was doing a lot of stuff on Google. Technically this is a Google sheet, but it has like integrations and um scripts within it that make it much easier and more efficient. But I used to just do everything on a Google sheet and would just do the math off a calculator and then add it in.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's basically just seeing if you have an interest rate less than 5%, very likely you'd be able to wrap it, because that means as long as you're buying it for around market value, you could very likely to wrap it. But if it's a lower interest rate and that PITI looks like it's lower than market rent, then you have something that would work as a long-term rental. And then of course there's other strategies too with like pad split, rent by the room,
How about like
midterm rental, things like that.
adjustable mortgages? Like, does this formula work for adjustable mortgages too?
Well, that's the thing with adjustable rate mortgages. You don't, it's kind of hard to calculate because it's going to be dependent on the terms of those mortgages. And we don't want to touch adjustable rate mortgages at all, actually, just because there's no control with that, essentially. Where we like the 30-year fixed locked in mortgages, knowing that our interest rate will always be 3% and not potentially 8% in 2 years.
And how about like 2-1 buy downs? Like some mortgages are there like that too, right? How does that
Yeah,
work?
that wouldn't work in the sheet. You would just have to adjust it accordingly. So say if I was going to buy it down, a percentage or something like that, then I would just make the adjustment on that percentage of the interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you are using any AI bots as of now for getting leads? Cold callers?
I have before, and kind of with this new software we're using kind of has some AI integrations within it. Right now we don't really have a necessity for that though. The necessity would be more so for follow-up and whatnot too. So we probably will in the near future here as this builds out, but right now we don't really have a necessity for it. It would definitely help and make things more efficient. But I've used like AI with some previous like direct to seller stuff I was doing with the PPC ads.
Yes.
We would have them on drip campaigns with AI, having conversations with them, and then AI putting them in my calendar for me to have like closing phone calls with them. So we have used that before. I'm familiar with the AI stuff. It's just right now with this, we don't have some sort of, well, we have a CRM, but we haven't integrated the AI yet because I don't think it's quite necessary yet. Definitely, like, we just started this group a couple of weeks ago. So that's still stuff we're building out and trying to really make everything as efficient as possible in terms of like the data and systems and processes. So probably in the near future, we'll have something like that. And we're working on a website right now too. So that's probably something in the near future we'll have integrated in some sort of manner.
Okay. Yeah. So you're selling like, because you have cold callers, they're making sure you're getting the right leads. Are you like transferring that to build some kind of a tool?
What do you mean transferring that?
I mean, like, we are trying to filter out like what are the right leads, what are the wrong leads, and you getting some more deep insights, like if the agent is willing to do the deal or else like the seller is on a weaker spot. Are you building any tool out of it? Like, you're transferring all this information, the Google Sheets onto building up some tool?
Well, yeah, we have like, for Alex and I to keep track of them, we have our CRM where if there is motivation there or something from the agent, we are putting those warm leads in our CRM just to keep track of them and add notes to and whatnot. So that tool is kind of already in place. In terms of new tools, we just recently purchased that new tool to better skip trace the data and really cut down on things that don't really fit that exact low equity sub two. Because if we're just pulling straight from PropStream, we're having that new tool now that skips through that data and really narrows it down to higher quality data. But we just got that and we're just building that out and learning how to go about using it and scaling that.
Okay. Yes, I came across something like an ad, like, where the AI takes my information and like, it gives out like a LOI to
Yeah.
us in the background, and somebody calls in and closes on that deal. So I
Yeah.
was just
And
wondering.
yeah, so basically like there are, and because essentially that new software we have too, it's an auto LOI generator. So I have that LOI generator where I type things in as I underwrite and then it creates the LOI based off what I want. But of course, like those auto LOI generators, like the new software we have, it auto generates LOIs. So basically it'll skip that data and really refinalize it down to exactly what we're looking for. And then it generates LOIs automatically, but there's still not 100% guarantee that that interest rate and the remaining balance and all that stuff is correct, because the only person that would know that for sure is the seller and what their mortgage statement says. And then also to building rapport with that agent and actually speaking with them is huge, because I know multiple people in the industry that just blast out a shit ton of LOIs every single day. And of course, they're not doing the amount of deals they would be doing versus if they were calling and speaking with all those agents and saying, let me send something over in writing. Because these agents, I'm sure, get email blasted with tons of LOIs. Not saying that they don't show their sellers them, but if you're putting a voice to the LOI that you're then sending over, that's a lot better. So I still like the way, even though we have this new tool, it'll help in terms of the time of us creating the LOIs, but I really like being able to underwrite it for sure, knowing it's a deal and then sending over the LOI. But I mean, that's something we might explore with too, because we have that, like I said, we have that now where we could just blast out a bunch of LOIs. Yeah. And then, Joseph, I see you with your hand up. Do you have a question? Joseph, do you have a question? I see you with your hand up, unless you're not there anymore.
That's not Nikki. Hey, I'm sorry about that, Jack.
No worries.
I was wondering if could I call you sometime this week to spend a little time just trying to understand wraps? I can't wrap my head around it. No pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I say that, when I'm talking about the wraps, I'm like, I'm just spewing it out, and I'm like, I know this is probably
no, I get it.
Because
well, it's just new terminology for me because I'm new to the whole, wholesaling real estate sub-2 game.
Yeah, no, totally. And maybe we'll do something, because that's the thing. Like maybe we can do like a Discord call next week where I'm in the general chat answering questions about
good.
wraps for people, just so everyone, if people are interested in that too, can join it. Yeah, because I kind of touched on it briefly there, but a lot of it is just like going through it repetition, just like the calling. Like, okay, I get the basic premise, but I have to do it a bunch of times until I really understand it.
I understand.
Yeah, but yeah, we could totally hop on a call. You have my number in the Discord. Just shoot me a text, and we could set up something. And if other people are interested in that, then we could maybe just make it a Discord call.
No, that sounds good. One more question or concern I have is just just from the calls I made yesterday was I just got a little bit of pushback. Well, I said that in Discord too, about all the calls I made to the agents, because I have a list in my list is based in Florida.
Okay.
And there's a lot of either senior adult community houses that are, none of these properties are in distress or in distress situations. So they're either, somebody's just trying to downsize, or, they had it for a couple of years and they want to sell it off because the equity is pretty high right now. And after like 10 calls, I mean, almost every real estate agent I talked to, as soon as I got on the phone, I was like, just calling to try to get some information on this particular property. Yeah, well, just so you know, we're not interested in sub-2 or creative financing. If that's what you're calling about, we don't have time. So it's like,
yeah, and that happens, honestly. And I mean, it's different.
Yeah.
Like that's such a small pool of data. Not saying you only made 10 calls, but say if you only made a couple dozen calls, that's like such a small pool of data to really dig it from. But there's been times where I've made like, it's going to be city-based, area-based, timing-based, things like that. But that's super common, like what you said. I'm sure a lot of other people are going through that right now too. But then at the same time, it's just a numbers game, just like any sort of sales thing. And, that's something we can refine with data too. Like once we're getting feedback from certain people saying, hey, this isn't, you know, I mean, I know Florida is a good market, but that's something we could maybe start realizing. If a lot of people are saying Florida just seems like it's hit super, super heavily and we're not getting any
Right.
traction there, then we could tweak some data and stop pulling lists in Florida momentarily and focus on maybe some other areas in the Midwest.
Of course.
You know, so that's I'm glad you're sharing feedback like that though. And
Yeah. You know, I was able to like have a nice long conversation with one agent that just told me about some of the reason why we're getting the pushback is because, you know, these people are really attached to their properties, and like, you know, especially if they're not in distressed situations, they want to get like top dollar or whatever for them. But the thing is, a lot of them are in either gated communities, adult communities, they have HOAs. So it's like all those stipulations that go along with owning those types of properties. It's kind of hard to either offer sub two or, you know, even the cash deals. Like if we were in position to offer, you know, cash, make cash offers, they're so into trying to get close to their asking price. They don't want to hear anything below like, you know, $50,000 that's below their asking.
yeah, yeah, no, and that happens a lot too, because like some of these, it's just us planning this. Well, unless it's an agent that answers instantly. If this is about sub
Yeah.
two, we're not interested. But even if it's one that looks like it has a bit of equity, or even if it doesn't have any equity and it's just been on market for 8 days or something like that, it's just having a conversation, then pivoting into what we do and planting the seed. And then they might come back to you in a month from now when that listing's still sitting at that ask price because they can't drop it.
Absolutely.
So,
And I make sure I have that kind of conversation with them too, because I want to make sure that I can at least stay in contact with them as a lead agent.
yeah,
Because unfortunately, some of the ones I called, they were like, "You don't know that this one is under contract." I'm like, "No, I don't." Like, because the MLS doesn't tell you all that all the time.
yeah, and that's just part of it. We're trying to refine the data as best as possible. There's always going to be, you know, gaps in it where something like that happens.
It's good practice for me, so I'll take it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, totally. Anything else to that answer that question?
No, that answers it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. What can you share about HOAs, their threshold? So HOAs, a lot of people move deals with HOAs. Some people don't want to touch HOAs just because that's another external factor that is out of control, of people's control. But I don't mind HOAs, and it really just depends. Like if you saw a deal and there was an insanely high HOA, I wouldn't just say forget about it, throw it away, because I think that's only going to be a small percentage of deals that have ridiculously high HOAs. And then even if they do, that doesn't mean there's not a deal there. Like if we got a full number breakdown, we would just have to look at the market, look at the exit strategy, and then see what the HOA is. If it was like a high rise apartment or something like that, where they have like $1,000 plus HOAs, then that, you know, could be something where it's like, I don't know if we could move this. Like that would be probably an exception where I would say I probably wouldn't mess with that one, because those are usually like $1,000 plus in those big high rises. But HOAs really usually aren't too much of an issue to deal with. It's just going to be situational though. Like I said, unfortunately, I can't really give a exact answer on that. We'd have to like see the deal first. Anyone have any other questions or anything? Anybody learn anything new today or wanted to share anything? I'm curious, did that explanation of the wraps kind of make sense for people though, or at least the brief kind of skim I did over that? And would anyone be interested in hopping on a call next week to learn kind of more about that? Potentially, I could do like another like Q&A on that for like an hour or 30 minutes or something like that in the Discord.
Yeah, it was a really good explanation. One big thing that I kind of took out of it too was that spread also, just from the mortgage, from the old one to the new one. That's also a spread in equity, just plus on top of the down payment and all that stuff. Is one thing I took out of it as well, along with a lot of others.
Cool. Yeah, you're basically creating equity out of thin air, man. It's cool. Like I was telling Alex, it's not like realized money like instantly. Like when you're creating equity in notes, it's not okay, I just made X amount this month, but it's like essentially net worth. Like, okay, like the spread on one of these deals is like a 50K spread between the first and second note. And then of course, if you're looking at cash in the deal, like my down payment, well, I get most of that back. and then it'll be an infant return soon. Now I have 50K equity spread between these notes. Even though it's not realized now, I just added like 50K of unrealized net worth in that one deal in a month, you know? So when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, holy shit, if I do a lot of these and stack them, it gets crazy with the wraps. So that's why I'm like mainly just focusing the wraps is the exit strategy right now. Anything else from anyone?
Hey, Jack, do you have any lending opportunities at your firm, like for deals?
That I need money on?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, yeah, there's going to be a lot. And Alex is here now too. Cause I mean, we're trying to do a decent amount of volume. We have the handful that we have an escrow and that we're closing on soon covered, but I'm sure we're always going to need lenders and partners on deals just as we get more inflow coming in consistently, as this builds out, as my other relationships build out, as our presence in the community builds out, helping other people. I know we're going to be getting more deals, and the relationships I build with agents that are already in my pipeline, like,
Do you have a company for that, for lending?
I don't have a company. Are you talking about me lending money or
No, you taking money for deals, like you have some capital or equity group as of now.
I don't have a company for that. And that's one thing I need to discuss with Alex. I don't know if we want to get PMLs or PMPs, like private money partners, meaning the private money partner then gets an equity stake. Usually it's like a 50-50 equity split. They cover the entry fee and then they get 50% equity in the deal. So I have a decent amount of partners like that, but always looking to kind of build to those and whatnot too. Yeah, but I definitely want to do more of these wraps before I start expanding like the partners list of money partners on deals potentially. But that's definitely something I'd be open to though, for sure.
Or you have some page for yourself, a website?
I mean, just Facebook, right? I mean, I wouldn't really say a page of saying, hey, this is what I'm looking for, fund these deals. It's more so of me just connecting with people at networking events and doing outreach and connecting with people to build those relationships. But I don't have a page. I mean, I have like pitch decks and spreadsheets of numbers breakdowns and showing how long their money will be in the deal, what the return is, the exits, the splits in equity, all that stuff. But I don't have a website built out specifically for people lending on our deals. Yeah.
Well, if you ever do decide to look for more people, just leave post it in the group, because sometimes I have extra funds as well, and I've been saving it for some time with other investors. But I would ask a question because I was speaking to a realtor, and they were saying that, oh, I would just tell my client to do a short sale as opposed to subject to. Are there any objections that you can give me that
yeah,
I don't
personally,
really understand the benefit of subject to over short sales.
personally, I haven't dealt with any short sales personally. Usually, with a short sale, if there's already a short sale about to take place, you can't do a sub two in that nature. And it really just depends though too with the short sale if it's gonna affect that person's credit substantially or how that would work. Because like I said, I haven't dealt with short sales and I don't know all the ins and outs with short sales. I know you don't want to do a sub two deal on something that has an ongoing short sale in place, but
No,
that
but I
is
mean like before it hit that, like that. So my understanding, every time I've spoken to realtors, well, not every time, but a few times I've spoken to realtors about it before it would go, they would go, well, I would just recommend that my client get a short sale. Like that seems to be their go-to suggestion when people are underwater. And I want to try to come up with some things to say to show them, no, you don't have to send them to short sale. Why not look at subject to instead?
Yeah, because I know the short sale will damage the credit to an extent. I don't think as bad as a foreclosure though. But yeah, I mean, it would totally be, you could totally say with a sub two, we would actually be helping out their credit. They wouldn't take a knock on their credit like a short sale. And actually with a sub two, we'd be able to put some money in their pocket at closing, where a short sale, they won't get anything and it affects their credit. I could send you some more information on that and give you an explanation of exactly what we do and how the subject to works. I think it'd be a way better scenario and in your client's best interest if they went with something like this rather than a short sale. let me email some more information over to you, and you could run it by them. And then you could go to Discord, go to the helpful documents, and then explain, or go to the helpful documents and then send them the what is creative finance email template. And then it will explain sub two and how it works. Cause I don't think, like, I think the agents would just be ignorant to it. Because a sub two would be much better than a short sale in terms of the seller situation. Because the short sale is going to affect their credit and they won't walk away with any money. Where at least with the sub two, we might be able to put some money in their pocket and it won't affect their credit. If anything, it'll be positive for their credit because we will be taking over those payments that are under their name, which will boost their credit.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And any questions from anyone else here?
Are we open to going for deals with more than one mortgage on it?
Yeah.
More difficult, but still
Yeah.
considering those.
Totally. Yeah.
All right.
It would just depend what that equates to in the total payment. Yeah, it wouldn't be an issue though. We've dealt with those previously before. If there's nothing else, then I'll wrap things up here. Is Alex in the call or did he leave? Alex left, I believe. Okay. Yeah, so anything else from anyone? If not, I'm gonna end the meeting here. Give it 10 seconds. All right. I guess we are good then. It was nice speaking with everyone today. And any questions or whatnot, feel free to reach out to me or Alex, probably me for the next couple days because Alex is in Florida. And yeah, definitely looking forward to getting some deals done with you guys. And we could definitely set up something next week outside of the typical scheduled Zoom to dive further into wraps and answering some questions about that. We can just hop in a Discord call for that. And yeah, I mean, everyone have a good weekend. And who just joined? Okay, never mind. Yeah, so hope everyone has a good weekend and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, take care, everyone.